We're living in an RV for 3 years. We just bought our first house, and we want to share with you our process for how to go about choosing the right house for you.
So obviously the first thing you need to know when you're starting the process of buying a house is your budget. And you need to know your budget inside and out. And you need to have a pretty hard line on not budging, because once you get into the process, it's kind of easy to let things just inch up just a little bit more with every house that you look at.
It's really important to get a number down, and most importantly, this is not the number that the bank just pre-approves you for and says they will agree to loan you. Now, when it comes to setting a budget number, there's a really good place to start, and that's about 25 to 30% of your take-home pay should be going towards your monthly home expense. Now, that pretty much includes your mortgage payment, which should also include your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. So 3 items in there. For really easy numbers, if you have a take-home pay of $4,000, that means no more than $1,000 going to those things. Now, right off the bat, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's ridiculous. There's absolutely no way I could ever keep it within that 25 to 30% range where I live. And I get that. That's why this is just a starting point. If you live in a super high cost of living area, those numbers are going to be really difficult to hit. The last thing I'll say about this 25 to 30 number is that there is some level of personal sort of wants and desires that comes into play here. And this is why we're so big on budgeting holistically in general, because you may say, well, look, I really don't care about travel or eating out or, these hobbies. I really don't care about any of that. I truly just want to spend a lot of my money on my house, on my place that I live. And if that's you, and if that's actually true and your values are tied up there, then maybe you are more comfortable with pushing into that 35 or even 40% of your take home. Now, the other question that always comes up here when we're talking about the numbers is, should you do a 15 or a 30-year mortgage, and then what percentage of down payment should you put down? Well, I can tell you, Hannah and I we did 5% down, and we did a 30-year mortgage. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily endorse that for everyone. In fact, this is a whole nother video topic that I'm planning to do later. In general, it's ideal if you can afford a 15-year mortgage, but then you may decide to take a 30-year and do something else with that savings.
And remember that what we decided to do was influenced by crazy COVID interest rates.
Totally, yeah. We got a 2.9% interest rate, and so that also factored into our decision. If we'd been making this video 5 years ago in a totally different environment, we may have a different answer. So it's definitely important to keep that in mind.
So the second tip is to search and really get to know the area that you want to move to. And Zillow is like a huge help when you're doing this. So when we first started looking at houses, we were both subscribed to Zillow. And so every day in our email, we were getting houses for sale in our area. And you don't even notice, but you start internalizing like those prices.
We just looked at them all the time.
Yeah. And so you start figuring out like, oh, okay, in this area, that size of house is going to be about this much. And so for us, we really figured out what our money could buy in kind of 3 general areas that we were looking at. So there was like 2-ish miles out from town. There was like
sort of the downtown walkable area that we love being in.
And like close to the bay. So there's like 2-ish miles from that. Then there's kind of like super close, like literally in that. And then there was kind of that about a mile, so like in between those 2 areas. And we knew that for this area farther out from town, we could get like maybe a 3 to 4 bedroom new build with all like the most popular finishes, or we could get a slightly older house on like a bigger lot. And then if we came into like the downtown, we were looking at
a teeny tiny house,
maybe a condo, and then like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house that was a fixer-upper. So then you had like that in-between area. And if we came in that in-between area, then we could be maybe a little less than a mile out of town, and we could get a 3 to 4 bedroom house that needed a little help.
But going back to sort of this tip of really knowing the area and how this helped, so the house we ended up buying was really overpriced. Like it sat on the market for a few months, and I'm not sure that they were really even getting many offers. I think a lot of people were just scared off by the price point of where it was.
And the condition.
And the condition that the house was in for that price point. But this house, we had just been watching and like scouring like all these listings in this area. So we felt like it was really overpriced. So we sent in an offer that was way under what they had it listed at, and they actually came back. And so after some negotiation back and forth, we got a really great deal on this house, or at least a fair deal for what we thought it was in this area. So we can't overstate the importance of really knowing your area. Even if you have a real estate agent, we had a real estate agent, he was amazing, but even with a real estate agent, like, know the area for yourself and spend a lot of time looking around at what houses are going for in the different areas of that city.
So that leads perfectly into our third tip, which is to spend a lot of time in the area and, if possible, do a lot of walking around. So we became masters of this, and we had an advantage because we had the Airstream like in the area that we moved to for almost 6 months before we ended up buying something. And one Saturday, basically all of our Saturdays were taken up with just going out on long walks. And one Saturday we walked like over 11 miles.
Yeah.
Just checking out different neighborhoods. But places like streets, even close together, had totally different vibes.
Totally different feels.
Yep. And so one street might feel really claustrophobic, and then the other street would feel like super great. And we really loved that kind of area. So we just can't overstate the importance of walking around and really getting to know areas for yourself.
And if you can't tell here, we're not big fans of picking a new city that you want to move to and then buying a place there. Yes, people do it. Yes, it can be done. If you really want to do that, by all means, have at it. That's not our opinion. We definitely think you should, pick the city you want to move to, and then either go rent there for a little while, go get an Airbnb there, go vacation there multiple times. If you are lucky enough to have an RV, go RV there and hang out there. You need to go and really dig into that area and figure out what part you really want to be in. And that's where the walking came in so huge for us, because even just driving around certain neighborhoods would have completely different feels versus when we would actually get out of the car and walk through a specific neighborhood. Totally different change for actually feeling out what you like and don't like about certain things.
If we had moved here after like a 1 weekend visit or something, like just bought something without spending more time, we would have bought a very different house than what we
Totally different house. So be patient. Do not rush this part. It is probably the most important part, honestly. All right, so the fourth tip is to clearly define your priorities and vision for the house that you're looking for. Now, this sort of captures two things. One is the sort of, is this a long-term, a short-term, we don't even really know how long we're going to be here term sort of by, like what are we doing here? And if it is that, we're not really sure. You definitely have to maintain a lot of flexibility. And then this is also dialing in the super specific details. Similar to where you're deciding what city you want to be in, you need to get hyper focused on like, what are the must-haves? Is it a certain location in the city? Is it a certain number of bathrooms or a certain number of bedrooms? Is it a certain style of house, a ranch versus a cottage versus whatever else? You need to dial in those must-haves and have that clearly sort of articulated and both you be on the same page. And then using your budget, your priorities, and the vision that you have for the house, now we can start dialing in on which specific house might work. For us, location and the size of the house, especially being able to accommodate guests, were the two most important things. We were really flexible on the age of the house, the style of the house, on a lot of things. Obviously, we also had to be able to, put the Airstream in the driveway. After that, we were super flexible, which is why we ended up buying a house that does need a ton of work that we're willing to do ourselves very patiently over the long run. So with that list and with your budget and all these other factors, now you're sort of armed to start really dialing in which specific house will work for you.
So a lot of people would stop their planning for which house they wanted to buy right there. But we feel like this fifth tip is one of the most important ones, and that is to budget for how you want to furnish your new house and or any immediate renovations that you want to do. And on top of that, if you have a spouse, you need to clearly communicate those expectations with your spouse.
That can be one of the hardest parts too, because what unfortunately a lot of people do is they spend so much time and effort saving up to get that down payment for the house, and then they spend basically their entire savings to get that down payment, and then they get into the house and they realize, crap, we can't afford to furnish it. There's a lot of stuff we want to buy. We want to repaint a room, especially like a house we bought. There's a ton of stuff that we want to do. And so you need to really think that through on the front end. You either need to know, look, we're putting all our money in the down payment and we're basically not going to be able to afford to furnish it for a very long time. And we're going to have to slowly do it and be totally okay with that. Or you need to maybe downsize the house you're gonna afford, right? Pull back a little bit, not max out your budget so that you can keep some reserves available to furnish the house and buy some of the stuff that you really want. But
either option is great.
Totally.
It's just all about like what you and your spouse are willing to do and how you want to do that.
And it's important because unfortunately most people don't do this. And then they, are so stressed out from the whole process. They get into the house and they just say, whatever, forget it. And they put all the furnishings on a credit card, right? And so now we're just digging a hole for ourselves. And that's the real problem that we want to avoid.
And hopefully you're not coming from an RV like we were, where we literally had nothing.
Nothing.
But I mean, even when you have stuff, everything still just adds up. And I mean, it's crazy how much money you can spend super quickly.
It goes fast.
For a new house.
It goes fast.
Yeah, we know.
So don't overlook the extra budget for the furnishing and the decoration and the renovations once you actually get into the house.
If you're buying a house and your wife hates the carpet in it and she's going to want to tear it out the second you move in, but it's going to be like 2 years before you got the money saved up for that, make sure she knows that before you buy the house. While that particular incident did not happen with us, we've had plenty of other similar ones.
We've had plenty of others. Yes. Clear communication around what
your expectations.
Yes,
very important.
The expectations you have and what money is available to meet those expectations. Spend a lot of time on this on this conversation. Okay, so that perfectly leads us into tip number 6 here, which is to not get impatient. And remember, like, if you miss one house, if the perfect deal just goes by, it's okay. Another one will come along. And we definitely let our excitement get the best of us a couple of times. Luckily, we never went all the way through with it. But I mean, even thinking about like that first house that we looked at, we were like super jazzed up about. Trying to get you to jump in here.
Oh, all right. So Nick was dropping me some hints to jump in with this story, and I was not picking up on them. But the first house that we looked at, we were super excited about. And I mean, we were so excited to go see this house that neither one of us could hardly sleep the night before we went to go look at it.
Yeah.
We go in, we walk through the whole thing. We're like, okay. Location was like perfect.
Location was perfect.
Size was
perfect.
Like,
it was in our budget.
Yep.
We were excited.
So then we walk out into the backyard to like kind of talk things over with our real estate agent, and all of a sudden I'm just struck by this noise. I'm like, oh my gosh.
This low grade just
constant humming, but it was pretty loud. And I was like, what is that noise? And so eventually we figure out, okay, the water treatment plant is basically in this house's backyard. Like there was kind of like a fence with like a big drop off, and then down below in that big drop off was the water treatment plant.
Yep.
And honestly, I told Nick, I said, I'm kind of surprised that we even noticed that because we were so excited. And it was kind of a good lesson to us to like, okay, tone it down when we go look at houses and really try to detach, as Jocko would say, and get your emotions out of it as much as you can, and look at things through, what word am I looking for?
Through a more rational lens.
Yeah.
Like it's really, really easy to let your emotions get the best of you. Buying a house is exciting, and for many people it's like a dream come true, something they've always dreamt about. It's really easy to let your emotions just go to level 11.
And it's really easy to buy into the dream house narrative.
Yes.
And so we wanted to encourage you not to do that and remind you there are always other houses. And even if you miss out on what you think is your dream house, if you have that list of non-negotiable criteria of what you are really looking for in a house, and you buy something, even if it's not that first one that you thought was your dream house, if you buy something that's within that list of criteria, you're going to be able to make that your dream house. So it kind of goes back to that whole idea of don't make the right decision, make the decision right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more of that to house buying than most of us think.
All right, so if you liked this video and found it helpful, be sure to check out this video right up here, all about how to choose the specific area before you find your dream house, find your dream city or location that you want to live in. So check that video out. We'll see you over there.